Hello and welcome to the Offside Line Pod with David Barnes and me, Pete Burns. If you enjoy what we do, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode and tell your friends, family, teammates, clubmates and the people you sit next to in the stand all about us. And if you'd like to leave a positive review, it would really help us with the old algorithm as it helps other people find us. Thanks for listening, and here's today's show.
It's the offside line.
This is not soccer. Is that clear?
Utmost danger. Danger could be there. It's a try. A magnificent try for the 21-year-old.
Brilliant. Oh, that's brilliant.
Morning, everyone. Welcome. We're here this morning to give you some information around a lot of the activity that's gone on since we last spoke before the summer. Firstly, as you're aware, we're here to announce the extension of Gregor Townsend as the men's national team head coach, and also of Franco Smith extending his contract as the head coach of Glasgow Warriors. On top of that, we're also going to be speaking around the new high performance heads of department that have been recruited over the summer months. Those four heads of departments, Alex Ross, James Moore, Richard Chesser and Al Callick, come into key roles to lead up the different disciplines within the high performance department. And for those of you who came to the briefing I gave in June around explaining the structure of the performance pathway, there's also a myriad of other positions that have been filled over the summer months to support that. The new National Talent Pathway program and the reformed academies have both been filled with a number of coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, physios, nutritionists and performance analysts, the majority of which are now in place, and those programs start to go live this month and should all be functioning effectively in the coming weeks. So there's been lots of activity, lots of action happening, and lots of people in place and programs in place, and we're really excited about having both those programs and those people up and running, and also extremely excited to have two world-class coaches such as Gregor and Franco locked in for another period of time.
Welcome to the Offside Line Pod, the first of Scottish Rugby. We are down at Oriam for a press conference with Alex Williamson and David Nucifora, and we're joined by the great Mark Palmer from The Times. What are the key takeaways from that press conference?
I mean, I don't think there was any massive headlines that hadn't sneaked out the night before, which, you know, the headlines being from the rugby fan on the street's point of view. Gregor Townsend has signed a contract extension to the end of 2027, which means he finishes the next World Cup cycle before he gets an extension, or more likely not. And Franco Smith, who, you know, has been linked with a lot of jobs, including that Scotland job, has signed on. He's staying till 2028, so he's still on the payroll when that 2027 contract runs out. So, I mean, those are the headline stories. But there was also David Nucifora was in explaining there's 4 new appointments. You know, I think he's spoken before about there's 8 new departments he set up in the performance department. He's dealing with the women after the World Cup, which is a different story. And then there's 7 other departments. They've now appointed all 7 department heads for these 7 departments, which are things like strength and conditioning, player performance pathway, etc., etc. These guys have all been, I think there's 3 internal appointments, 4 from outside the business. And out of that, and this is the last thing I'll say, Mark, I'll let you have a word in a minute. Al Kellogg, former Scotland captain and managing director of Glasgow, is moving across to the player performance pathway, head of player performance pathway, I think it is, which seems to be looking at the kind of 18 to 19, 20-year-olds who are either in the programme or they're all in the programme, obviously, but some of them will be the academy guys, the guys at Glasgow, I think there's 48 guys in the Glasgow Edinburgh Academy, and he's basically in charge of that area, which is quite an interesting one, which we'll probably dig into a wee bit more, because he doesn't have a huge performance coaching background, although he's been around the performance game for a long time.
Something that never gets mentioned, actually, really, is like the Exiles programme, which used to be a big thing. Does that
what happens with that nowadays, and who's in charge of that? Is he in charge of that as well?
Oh, you've put us on the spot here.
Should have asked that.
I actually, yeah.
should have asked it, but I honestly couldn't tell you. It was probably, probably tells its own story. As you say, it's been something, because there were various iterations of the London, the SQ, the London Scottish tie-up that always foundered on various personal conflicts, and now, I honestly think there's a bit of a vacuum there. Certainly, there's a knowledge vacuum there, because we don't know about it if it exists. So,
in fairness, there was, which I hadn't read, because there was a link at the bottom of the press release, and it kind of goes through, and there's a headline Scottish Qualified Programme, so it tells you all about it. But it seems to be asked, this is the link from the press release, how you nominate your kid or somebody to be involved. So we don't really know. So we don't really know.
Mad thing at my kid's school last year, getting an email going around for if you're Irish qualified. It must have gone around all the Scottish schools.
Really?
Saying like,
it's such a battleground now, isn't it?
Do these camps and things like that. Yeah.
The dual qualified thing, but no, I think that was a fairly broad summary, but a very detailed summary of everything that was spoken about there. As you said, the main headlines are Gregor and Franco, which we can dig into. Possibly a surprise on both fronts. I would argue that although having said that, Alex Williamson, the CEO, was very clear in June that this is the way he wanted to go, and this is the way it's played out. But certainly, myself and Barney and the others who were in Dublin that day at the end of the last season in the URC, Franco did sound like a man on the edge.
Yeah.
It was very much, I don't know if I'm even coming back, never mind I'm going to sign an extension. So, that kind of anger, frustration, whatever it was on the day, seems to have dissipated somewhat. He's recommitted. They were pretty non-committal as to whether a part of that was, has he been told at the end of this, by the way, you'll take the step up? Because that was the obvious solution that many saw, was that in 2026, when their original deals both ended, they could potentially swap roles, or that Gregor would certainly move out and that Franco would move into the national job. But that's clearly not happening, and it's as you are.
Yeah, I think that's got to be the logical way it goes. When you get to 2027. All Gregor's contracts up to now have been mid-World Cup cycle.
It's always been bizarre.
Yeah.
Really?
So that seems logical anyway. But it's the end of the cycle. He'll been there for 10 years. He's had his 3 shots at the World Cup, which is as much as any man. So in the fact that Franco's is the extra year, it does just seem the logical thing is, because otherwise Franco's going to walk. So they're going to have to replace 2. They're going to have to find 2 very high-level coaches within 12 months of each other. So it seems to me, speculating, the obvious thing is, as they said, you've got another year, Franco, you're straight into that job.
Unless Gregor wins the World Cup, then what are they going to do?
Well, that's another can of worms. Yeah.
Where's the budget for the statue? That's
Yes,
indeed.
But Mark, you said that it's surprising, but then it's not. Gregor's not surprising because there's no other candidates really available right now.
Aren't there?
Are there not? Well, you tell me.
Well, that's not my job to find the candidates, but we've been told that they've scoured the world.
I mean, who is available? Like technically, you could maybe buy out Vern Cotter if you wanted to. You could maybe pay
Checker.
Checker.
Throw some money at Agara.
McDonald.
McDonald.
As well.
Well, there's 6 that we've named in 2 seconds.
But they're not actually currently available. You'd have to buy them out of the contract. Like Agara would require a huge amount of cash to get him out of La Rochelle.
But they're saying they want to be world class in everything that they do. They want the very best in category, and they believe they've got that in Gregor. So we'll now have to see. There's nothing. Put it this way, I just don't see what changes between the last 8 years and then into the next 2. I don't see there's going to be a fundamental shift that suddenly Gregor shows us something that he hasn't up to now. Which, let's be honest, he's got the team to a certain level, and we all enjoy watching them at their very best. He's got, certainly from a Lions point of view, he's up that contingent massively. Overseen some great growth there. But we're still in a situation where, 3rd seems to be the ceiling. Whether that should be the ceiling or not is another question. But I don't see where this great quantum leap is going to come from without a change at the top.
The interesting thing, it's not interesting, but it is interesting because I'm about to say it. The story came out on the BBC last night that Gregor had signed this contract, and I was coaching Robbie's rugby team. Robbie Barnes gets a mention again, and I mentioned it to 1 or 2 of the dads watching the game who are rugby fans, but not, they don't say themselves, not massive rugby bores like us, and they were talking about it, and there were kind of mixed feelings about, and it was a kind of, it's the same again a wee bit. But the point that they both kind of agreed on, and he's totally right, and it's not the first time it's been said, is, we just want to go into the final weekend of a Six Nations with a chance to win it, or go to a World Cup and we're in our quarterfinals and it's do or die time. And we've had great win-off wins, but I think that's the problem. That's what Gregor has to do immediately. So the next Six Nations, I think, because. Well, he doesn't because he's got a job for the next 2 years. But I think that's the problem is it's not that we've not won anything. We've not really got that close to winning anything.
No. I mean, you look at the fixtures and you think there's a pathway through that Six Nations.
Yeah.
But I think I say that every year.
We do.
Apart from last year, I think actually 2025 Six Nations was the only one that you think we are absolutely decimated by injury from before we even start. And I think
and you're finishing in Paris.
You finish in Paris and you just think, it's going to be this one's going to be tough.
More often than not, we shouldn't be contending. realistically. But I think 1 and 7, 0 and 7 strike
That's
rates.
what I think. You're saying what's the story going to change? But I don't know. Can it change? I mean, obviously it can, because you get a Warren Gatland coming into Wales and suddenly changing the dynamic in that team massively. And you'd always look at the sum of their parts going, there's no way that these teams that are performing like this in the league and in Europe can somehow come together and then become go to number one in the world. But they did it.
My big contention has always been, we've reached a point where what is there to lose by finding out if more is possible or not possible? Make the change and see what happens, and particularly when the solution is sort of staring in the face with Franco, who I would say his two biggest successes at Glasgow, bar actually winning a league title, obviously, but he is the mentality shift from the real loser mentality that they had previously. The fact that now, you go into that building and you immediately know where they're headed, what they're trying to do. There's clear leadership on and off the field. So mentality would be one, and also the creating depth by blooding young players. And I know it's a different model when you get to the Test Arena, but those are two things, depth and mentality, that have really held Scotland back. It's like, well, you've got a guy who's got a track record of success there. What is to be lost by giving him a crack at it? But
yeah, and there's a danger, that Franco's burst his bubble by 2 years' time.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. He won the URC 2 years ago, 2024. They did win it last year. I mean, I don't think we can say it was a disaster last year, but that's not an upward trajectory. He's quite an intense guy. I mean, I think these jobs
this is
are.
the thing. I mean, my instant reaction is it makes total sense the way they've contracted that he would then be able to step up. But I don't know why. I just don't see it happening. I don't think it will. I don't think it will be him in the hot seat.
Well, Mark's alluded. That press conference. Franco was quite. I mean, it was strange watching him. Not just that press conference, but the weeks leading up to it. Those cracks appearing, and those cracks appearing in the way Glasgow played, and you just wonder, So, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Franco is going to, be have this high reputation as he has now. I hope he does, and I hope Glasgow has a really good year. But it's almost it's like pro rugby. Wait. You have to grab what's coming when it's there, because things don't hang around. So I think it's a bit of a gamble in that sense.
It is interesting that he was the kind of again in the hot seat for the Wales job, but it went to Tandy in the end. And who knows what the machinations were with the contracting or the offer on the table, or whether they wanted a Welsh guy coming back in who understood the domestic scene a bit better. But it was for a long time he was the number one target.
Franco must better have a word with his agent, because he didn't get linked to the Newcastle job. He's the guys off the.
But I mean, there was definitely a lot of that being pushed from Franco's side last year. Franco was definitely, a phrase was used in that press about him flying kites, and I don't think that's far wrong.
No.
He was clearly in the frame for these jobs, but he did nothing. He kind of fanned those flames.
Oh, he could easily
he
could easily have.
And to me that tallied with everything he then said after the URC semi, that he was frustrated. He felt that he'd earned the right to be backed more than he had been in his perception. Not being allowed to retain non-Scottish qualified players, squad size going down, losing assistant coaches. He felt, I think, that he'd got to a point where, I've won you a league, what more do you want? And now you're kind of reducing me and the situation around me. So there's no doubt that there's friction in that relationship. So it'll be really interesting to see. Again, that sort of thing you don't just solve that and it's gone.
No.
It's like the whole Gregor Finn thing. There'll always be something bubbling under the surface.
And Nucifur acknowledged that there when we spoke to him. He said, these guys are highly competitive, highly strung animals. There's got to be a competitive tension there. I thought there was an interesting thing that I don't know who was asked and said, what convinces you that things can move on with Gregor there. It's the same coach. Why? And he said, he's now got performance department. Now Nucifur is going to say that because he's the guy that's just spent a lot of money and time setting up. But he said, he's got this performance department around him. He's got this whole, this whole structure to support me. And you think, well, that's great, but what the hell's been going on for the last?
Yeah, has he been doing it all?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just thought that was a kind of
And realistically, this stuff is aimed necessarily at long-term growth. It's not to say, right, Gregor, we're suddenly going to find you 6 players that will get to your World Cup semi-final in 2027.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see how everything the stuff that's announced today is stuff that needs to evolve and push through over the next decade.
There's almost 2 separate stories.
Yeah,
aren't there?
I think so. Yeah. So I don't really see the correlation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right.
Mm-hmm. The performance indicators was an interesting one that you were pressing him on, because what is success?
I'm looking for him to continue on the good work that he's done, to build on that. He's in a position now where we've got a team that is maturing nicely, leading into a World Cup in 2027. He's also going to be working in a program now that's fully supported. It's not just Gregor trying to manage the national team, but he's now got a high performance department around him that's got a lot more support, a lot more bulk to be able to help what he's trying to produce at the same time. In high performance, you never sit still. You can't. You always have to be evolving. So no one ever is sitting there going, I think I'll just do the same as what I did yesterday, because people just race past you in this business. So no, evolution of what we're doing and how we're doing it. It's not only just as you heard or as you've seen from what we're doing in the business, doesn't stop there. This then permeates through all of our teams. So we're looking to evolve everything. And sport's great, isn't it? It's full of emotion. So people base their views on emotional things. You've either got a glass half full or a glass half empty. So, our view of Gregor is that he's got the continued level of enthusiasm and growth to be able to take this team forward. And, I've got the greatest confidence that he's going to be able to do that. Now, whatever I say won't change people's opinions of what they think should happen. That's sport. People love to be able to hold and air their opinions. That's why they enjoy it. So, but, we've got a lot of confidence in the decisions that have been made, that we've made the right ones. And as I said before, continuity and understanding what you've got is really important and should never be undervalued. And we understand that with both Franco and Gregor. And we think that Scottish rugby is going to benefit out of those decisions. So we'll keep pressing forward, and we'll keep chasing the best results possible.
We get so obsessed with the World Cup cycle, but what actually are we expecting from a World Cup? I mean, if we don't make the last 16 the next time, that is a disaster, because you do bloody well not to qualify for the last 16. Yeah. But quarterfinals, semi-finals is an incredible achievement, but that is it has to be massively unlikely.
Yeah, it feels miles away, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So what are the performance indicators for success? It's interesting.
I think that, the one that we've come back to repeatedly, that Barney mentioned it earlier, was this: going into the final weekend of Six Nations still in contention, and we just haven't done that. And that to me would be success. Whether we then finish first, second, third, or fourth, to still be in with a shout going into Super Saturday. That is a different level entirely. And it also suggests you've then had the mentality and the ability to put together a run there, not just say, right, we beat England or we beat France and then that's it, which has been the pattern up to now. So I think that would be a demonstrable step forward.
Yeah, I'd go with that. Consistency, it's just consistency. We've not had that.
And it was interesting about Brian Easton. You didn't sound convinced when he said
no, not at all. And
got a bit niggly there, Mark. It was a good question.
It's, and
we'll play that clip now.
So we're not comparing apples with apples there. I think if you're referring to Brian, Brian made a decision to move on from his role. So that's a different scenario from where we are with Gregor.
That decision,
so yeah, that's right.
David Nussbaum is right to say you're not comparing apples with apples, but you are comparing a Scotland national team head coach with a Scotland national team head coach. They've decided, and they're positioning it that Brian Easton made the decision to leave the job of his own volition. We can accept that, or we can not accept that. I think we all know which side of the fence we're on there.
I mean, that's a definite. He jumped before we pushed him.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a guy, and admittedly they didn't know this at the time, but they've got them to a World Cup knockout for the first time in more than 2 decades. Gregor's failed twice to do that, 3 times if you uncharitably included his spell as attack coach in 2011. what is success? What are you judging them on the same things? What are you wanting to hear from Gregor, or has it been? Because the danger is people perceive this as just, it was the easy option. They finally say, right, I'll just extend them because we can't find somebody else. We don't have budget. The organisation's struggling financially. We've not got the play. We can't make the big play to go and land a serious big hitter. So they've just kind of fallen into doing what they've done for the last 8 years. But again, maybe that's uncharitable, but there'll definitely be a perception of that, I think, on the outside, that this was kind of the easy route.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll put my hand, I'm kind of more, I wouldn't say positive, but ambivalent to Gregor getting the extension. I'm not against it. I can see the logic behind it. Because some of the things you detailed there, like there's a lot going on. There's a lot they've got to deal with. Finding the right guy. There is people out there, but it's not easy. Big money involved. We've worked bloody terrible for a long time, but we've got good backs. We've not got world-class forwards, really. Like somebody texted me, like, we've got pretty much a Lions backline, which is great, and Gregor's got to take some credit of it. And why haven't we won more? But we don't, we don't have a. But then it comes, I'm talking in circles here, but that comes down to Gregor as well, because we've known for a long time that we're not matching. We're not world class up front, and
hopefully, and ironically, it's the sort of young tight five forwards that the Franco's brought through are the ones that hopefully help change that picture, because you've got guys there, I think, who can take Scotland onto another level in terms of power and physicality up front. But yeah, it kind of feels that we've been having the same conversations about strengths and deficiencies on this side for virtually the entirety of Gregor's reign, and I feel we'll probably be having the exact same conversation this time next year. That's how it feels to me.
Yeah, I think that maybe that's right. In terms of what we want from the Six Nations, I think some of the selections in the last Six Nations were pretty conservative. Mm-hmm. Max Lewison wasn't available. But Johnny Gray and Grant Gilchrist again and again in the second row, who've been great warriors and soldiers. Let's give these young guys a go. Let's all go.
One thing that's emerged from the last few under-20 campaigns is like a really decent second rows, big sixes.
So get them playing. Get them playing. And get
don't let them get to 23, 24 and still have hardly played for Glasgow and Edinburgh and everyone in Scotland.
Get Freddie Get Freddie Douglas playing. Work out who your hooker's going to be, because. George Turner's, but Dave Cherry was the hooker in the last, but a bloody good tournament. But
that's not long term, is it?
No, so that's got to be, it's not a target, but that's got to be something that he does. Is just go for it.
Mm-hmm. Just on that Brian Eason mention that we had, just going back to that Scotland-Fiji game at the weekend. What were your sort of takeaways from that match, and then heading into the Canada game? Just from my point of view. The weather was terrible, but actually some of the handling was incredible. For Fiji's tries were sensational considering the conditions. All the tries scored by Scotland's outside backs, but my actual highlight of the whole game, I'm thinking like 3 real highlight cover tackle moments in Scottish rugby history. Thinking Chris Patterson on Ben Foden in 2011 at Twickenham, and then there was, remember that mad one, James Fleming did one in the sevens, in the Wellington Sevens. I think it was something like 2017.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the guy. Someone Burgess was he was in, and James Fleming came in and did a sensational cover tackle.
I wish I'd remembered that, because we did a thing with James Fleming talking about the sevens. I wish I'd remembered that. I definitely could have made an intro out of that.
Unbelievable tackle, and that helped them qualify for the quarterfinals of that tournament. And then Francesca McGee's cover tackle at the weekend I think that was the absolute highlight of the game for me. It was just an incredible moment.
Yeah, so I was at GHA doing the Premiership game, and so I didn't watch it live. And Eve McTiernan, who's down there, and she was doing the player ratings, and she gave, I think we talked about it in the pod last week, she gave Francesca McGee a 10 last week, and I knocked it down to a 9.5 and sent her a text message saying, because we've never done a 10, and she was quite stroppy about it, and I got a text message through saying, if you don't give Francesca McGee a 10 this week, then we're never speaking again. And I did change it, but I didn't even tell her I was doing it. She's not brought it up with me yet, so we'll see. But,
these editors, honestly.
I've never done a 10, but yeah, I mean, but they got the result they needed. Mm-hmm. Was it? Would you say it was? I mean, it doesn't matter.
The weather was minging.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't matter. They got what they needed. I mean, it's Canada.
I think it feeds back into what we were talking about with the men's team. That look where the Scotland women's team was coming from for years. Can't buy a win. Can barely score a point. And then you go into a World Cup and win. Put 2 winning performances back to back. One of them a sensational win. So comprehensive on the opening day. delivering under pressure, consistency of performance. You know, that again, you're just looking for signs that things are moving in that forward direction, and you can see that demonstrably it is with the women, whereas with the men, it's harder to identify that upwards curve, or certainly in a linear sense.
Yeah,
So,
they've found they've hit like top speed at the right moment,
exactly,
which is what the great teams do. You know, I was getting messages about Brian Eason from people, disgruntled people, whether they knew, Brian's been there too long. You know, they've gone pretty quiet now.
And he's evolved the team as well. You were talking there about some over-reliance on old figures in the Scotland team, but like the crop of younger players that have come through, who could have imagined a Scotland team without Jade Conco in it?
Yeah, totally.
and never mind a winning Scotland team without Jade Conco in it.
Absolutely.
He's done a real good job in growing and evolving that side.
Yeah.
So we were having a debate with Eve on last week's pod about the makeup of the team for the Canada match, and she said that she now, quarterfinals sorted now, rest your starting team for England. But I would think that would be absolute madness. If you can try and turn over Canada as hard as it is, you then play Australia rather than England in the quarterfinals, because
and
otherwise
momentum
momentum and everything.
You
have to try and turn over Canada, because otherwise you're resting for what?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to beat England.
No, exactly.
That's not going to happen.
And they've got Canada are an exceptional team, full of exceptional players, and what have Scotland got to lose here? I think you've almost got a free hit, and certainly in the sense that you don't have to win the game to qualify. So I would be throwing everything at it.
Yeah, and then everything, and everything.
And 8 days to the next game.
Yeah, and everything at England. And if you're ever going to be able to kind of trick your body into getting yourself up to do it again, is going to be that. I think, it's all or nothing. It's just all or nothing. And they can beat Canada, I think.
And then they would face Australia, and that is a...
Yeah, and then suddenly you're going, hang on a minute.
And with the best in the world, there's no reason to think they can ever beat England.
No.
At this stage. No. And that's not,
No, it's just reality, isn't it? Yeah.
So, yeah.
Nice one. Right, Mark, we'll let you go, and then we'll get on to the domestic stuff. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thanks, Mark.
Right, let's cross over into Clubland then. So we'll start with the Women's Prem, and the big result from the last weekend was Watsonians beating Christopher Cougars 29-19 to move them top of the Premiership. Cartha lost at home to Biggar 37-31. Heriots beat Hillhead Jordan Hill 20-12. And Stirling beat Geary 99-0, which is back to the bad old days of last year. But that Watsonians result against Christopher, the first loss for Christopher for a long time now. That was really interesting. So, and then into men's Prem, Heriots, one of the top sides last year, having a slow start to this season, lose 48-14 at home to Ayr. But as we've said previously, there's not many sides that are going to be disrupting that Ayr juggernaut. Kelso won at home 14-10 against Hawick. Watsonians had a big win away from home at Selkirk 48-14, and Curry also won away from home at Hawks 19-15. But the big result again, I would say, is GHA winning 13-10 against Melrose at home, and that is just a brilliant thing for that club, coming up and having that momentum from last year, winning the division and coming into the Prem, and proving they deserve to be there.
Absolutely. I mean, I got lucky this weekend because I went along and I was at the Watsonian Stirling game on Friday night, so I saw that was a good game, really good contest. A bit of a surprise. I think it's good for the league. I think Watsonians, Stortford hadn't lost a game in the league since...
They were unbeaten last year.
Yeah, I think it was November 16 games. So, it opens it up. I spoke to Eric Jones, the Christopher coach, who was fairly philosophical afterwards, obviously disappointed. But, as he said, you have to lose sometime. They're missing a couple of players, Adele Ferry and Alex Stewart down at the World Cup. There's not many from the club game, down there. But so they are missing a couple of players. And a few other injured or unavailable for different reasons. I think they'll come back stronger, keeps the thing. But it was a good game, really good contest. And Watsonians, they just had this blitz early in the second half, and just got away from them. Thoroughly deserved the win. And then I got lucky because I was at the GHA Melrose game, which wasn't a classic in terms of free-flowing rugby. It was a bit of a kind of greasy old day at Braidholme. But GHA were the better side throughout. I felt, had more of the game, didn't really take their chances. Their line-out, which has been a big strength of theirs, during the National League camp, because they're another team that's on a big, long winning streak. Slightly different because they've done that in the second tier, come up, and their line-out just didn't function. They had about 4 line-outs on the right-hand side inside the 22 that, for one reason or another, didn't work out. And you're thinking, at this level, that's going to cost you. And it looked like it was going to cost them, but they stuck in. And I spoke to Callum Forrester, who we've had on the show afterwards, and he said, it's more or less, I think, I was about to, it's something like 15 of the players that were involved yesterday were in the squad that got relegated 2 seasons ago.
Right.
It's more or less the same group of players. I think I've got 3 kind of students that have come up here to, study, who have added to the squad, but no big signings. And as Callum said, Fozzie said, it's a group of guys that have learned how to win games. So, he said, 5 minutes ago I was thinking, what's the message to the players afterwards? Great effort, guys. That's a lesson to you that, what's required to win. And, you needn't have bothered because when they get into position, they know what they have to do. They know what their job is, and it was just patience. They showed patience. They eventually won a line. I think it was a line out. No, they didn't. It wasn't. It was penalties, scrum, penalties, squeeze pressure, kept on going, kept it tight, and Dario Ewing, who's a real talisman for them, he's a great guy, open side flanker, ex-hooker, wee guy, absolute pocket rocket bomb, the classic, lovely guy off the pitch. I mean, I don't know him that well, but speak to him, a big smile on his face, scored the try. So I think that it's really a great way to end the game. Your captain and talismanic leader, and it was quite funny because there was a big Rami afterwards, and they're all punches weren't thrown, but it was everybody was in, more or less everybody was in, and Dario Ewing was right in the middle, just I'm gesturing if we don't have cameras here, hands in the air. And when I came up, it wasn't clear who'd scored the try because it was just this big pile. And so I spoke to Fozzie, on the pitch afterwards. I said, "Who scored?" He said, "I don't know." So he called across. He said, "Dario, was it you that scored the try?" He said, yeah, it was me. And I said, "Oh, what was the fight about?" And he goes, "I don't care. I was just celebrating. I thought he's such a combative wee guy, but he knows what it's all about. He'd scored the try, he'd got the points. You guys can have you guys can pull each other's shirts and push and shove. I'm enjoying the moment, punching the air." So it's good. It was a good day and good on GHA. Absolutely.
Oh, it's brilliant. I think it's such a good story, especially as you say, with so many guys to be then relegated. They know the importance of starting this league strongly, showing you deserve to be there, getting momentum, and it's incredible. You're looking at one of the top Super 6 sides of the last few years, now bottom of the league and without a win. I think that's the Heriots,
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, they'll get better. I'm sure they will. There was a lot of young guys that are getting blooded in there. And they've lost some. It was interesting because at the start of the season when we were doing.
You said they've lost a lot of players. Have they retired?
Well, Chris Keane, the loose head prop, and Michael Linus, who were kind of the hooker, they retired. Ross Jones, I think, he's a kind of standoff fullback kicker. He was a Welsh guy, really experienced. Kind of was, I think, even had a coaching role. He's moved on. Jamie Campbell, who was on the books at Edinburgh, was a young guy, came back from Australia, and he was really important to them last year. And I think he's playing down in England now. So it's like 5 or 6 guys, but
for the depth of the squad that they normally have, because they are not casting aspersions on them at all, but they're very good at scooping up and recruiting in the off season. And they normally have very, very good depth. So it's interesting. And I think they haven't replaced those guys, obviously.
And it's interesting the contrast with Watsonians because they lost Neil Everett Hess retired, who's a talisman with Jason Baggett, Freddie Owsley. I mean, I would say last season they were more reliant on this kind of spine of really important players: Irvin Hess, Baggett, Owsley. There's somebody else I can't think of off the top of my head, and they all retired. And so you looked at them, and they're 2 from 2 at the moment. So they've not played.
Yeah, that was a big win. Nearly 50 points away from home down at Selkirk. That's a huge win.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting. So Ayr are down at Melrose on Saturday, isn't that right?
Yeah, they are. So the fixtures this weekend are Curry host Heriots, GHA host Kelso. So they've got to be looking at maybe a third scalp there. Hoyk have Selkirk, Melrose have Ayr, and Watsonians have Hawks. And in the women's prem, Hillhead Jordan Hill play bigger on Friday night, and then on Sunday it's Corstorphine against Stirling, Geary against Cartha, and Watsonians versus Heriots.
Okay. Yeah.
So there we are. So those, again, just really already the league is interesting. Not that it's never not interesting, but at this stage of the season, there's losses happening that you maybe wouldn't have predicted 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. And we'll just have to wait and see. I don't think we should bang on every week. Can anyone beat Ayr? We'll just maybe.
We're not going to be boring. We'll just wait and
see. I mean, we'll see. Curry beat them last year. We saw that coming. So we'll see.
Right, Barney. Before we go, let's talk about the exciting developments at the Offside Line.
Exciting.
So we now have a subscription model. Talk to me about how this works, the decision to do that, and what it means for the site as a whole. Yeah, so the subscription, I mean, we don't have it quite yet. We communicated it. We'd spoken to quite a lot of people about it
So I don't think it was a secret that was coming, but we kind of communicated it yesterday, so that was Tuesday. Oh yeah, we're Wednesday today, Tuesday. Letter, we've got a kind of mailing list, so we sent a letter from me to them, and I also published that on the site to explain that. Really to do with technical issues, it's not the subscription model doesn't launch until Monday, but we were quite keen just to get the message out there. One of the things we were really determined we didn't want to do was just drop it on people and say, we've got subscription, pay up, or get lost, which wouldn't have been the message, but it could have come across as that. So as of Monday, people will be able to they'll be able to subscribe and get 2 articles for free per month. But beyond that, if they want to read and comment and what have you, then it's a £5 a month subscription, which we believe's pretty fair. I mean, I always can compare it to the cost of
incredibly good value, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think it is. And you say what's the thing behind the decision? Ultimately, I always think back. There's a guy called Murray Kinsella, who's an Irish rugby journalist, and he works with 42. And they went behind a subscription maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I remember speaking to him about it. And I wasn't even contemplating for the Offside Line at that point. I said, what made you make that decision? Or it wasn't his decision; it was 42's decision. He said there wasn't a decision to make, Barney. There was no decision. It's the only way this works. And I didn't really take that on board at first. I was like, I'm sure we can do it, by selling advertising and voluntary, and merchandise and do everything. And so I wasn't thinking too deeply about it, to be honest with you. But I remember it all stuck in my head, and as it's gone on, the site's gone on, and we've kept on developing it because that's what we want to do. We want a really good site. We want to cover everything Scottish rugby. It's just become more and more apparent that that's the only way. Elaine Hamilton's kind of got involved in November 2023 after the World Cup. I stopped freelancing, so that all of a sudden it became my only source of income. Elaine got involved as who I knew was McCree's Financial, so she worked for McCree's Financial Services, were one of our best advertisers, longest term, and she was looking for a new challenge, and so she's commercial director, managing director, and she's done a great job driving the commercial side, and she works her backside off doing that, and worked up some really, really good partnerships for us that worked for both sides. So we're really pleased with that, and we're still, loss making. We've relied, and we've got investors who have come in and put money in because they can see the value of it, but we're not making money. And I think I said in the letter, we've got, we're at this point. We've got 2 choices. We drive ahead, and we, really, drive the site forward, or we organise an organised retreat. And I'm not really ready to do an organised retreat. I put too much. It's like I put too much into it to say, we'll drop this and we'll drop that and we'll do this. So, we'll do a bit less of that. I think there's more to write about. I think the people that like us because we work our backsides off to cover everything. And I think people will make a decision that it's worth £5 a month to them or not. And we hope that a lot of people do. The money that comes into that means that we can carry on investing in the site and paying ourselves, but not huge salaries.
Yeah.
And we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding. So I'm quite excited, It was quite nerve-wracking when you put when you pressed the article. Well, I thought it was going to be, and it wasn't as nerve-wracking as I thought it was going to be, because I thought we're going to have backlash. And we didn't really have much backlash, but I also thought about it. I thought it has to. It's time. It has to happen. And if we're wrong and people don't value it and don't want it, which is entirely fair enough. I'm not saying that to be. Then we'll find out, and it's better to know now and move on and not. So that's really the thinking behind it.
So it's £5 a month, or you can do an annual subscription for £50, so you get 2 months free.
Yeah, you've saved me from an ear bashing from Elaine for not pointing out. You can also gift it. You can gift it to if you're not necessarily a rugby fan, or you're a rugby fan, you've got another rugby fan that you know that you think might like it. You can gift it to them. A year subscription. So that's going to and. So we've I don't think we have jumped the gun. We wanted to communicate it to people. We wanted to give people time to kind of think about it, ask questions about it. We've had really good feedback. A lot of people saying, I don't know how to subscribe, so that's probably on us. And I hope they don't get so frustrated that they give up. But definitely by Monday, we'll have done all the testing. It's really just about making sure that the system to subscribe is really slick and works and doesn't irritate people, because one of my biggest bugbear in life is when you're trying to buy something, you're trying to give somebody money, and you get caught up in this, like filling out forms, and then you somehow end up back where you started, and you have to go again. So hopefully, that's it. And it's, ultimately, I don't want to get too heavy or philosophical about it, but I think it's about information's. We live in an information age, and I think this whole industry, this whole news industry, there's a lot of it is about giving away less, and giving away stuff for free or not charging, and the only way to do that is give less, and we give less, and then we wonder why the industry doesn't work, and people, and we want to kind of we want to carry on investing in it, and this is the way to do it.
Perfect. Well, Monday's the day, everyone.
And I would say anybody, my email's on the website. If you do have questions about it or you want to come, we do, I accept that, people are going to raise an eyebrow, or some people will, and, I want to have a conversation with them about it, explain it, and, if it's not for you, it's not for you. That's fair enough.
So that email is contact@theoffsideline.com.
Yeah. Excellent.
And if you have any questions for the show, please write in as well, or post on social media. Just let us know, and we will read them out, and we'll answer them as best we can. And until then, Barney, I'll chat to you next week. Nice to do this in person.
Yeah, nice to do it in person.
A rare moment in person.
We should do this more often.
Yeah,
excellent.
That's great. Cheers,
we say that until we realise that the audio doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. It's very echoey.
Yeah.
I think hopefully it'll be all right.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, cheers, mate. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
It's the offside line.
This is not soccer. Is that clear?
On goes danger.